This is Beyond the Veil with Norman Meredith.
Good evening, folks. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Veil. Tonight we're going to talk about Chernobyl's Black Bird, Russia's Mothman. This is an interesting story. I was told this by a fellow co-worker one day while we were sitting at the station, just goofing off, and we were talking about paranormal and cryptids and all that. And he says, "Do you know the story about Chernobyl's blackbird?" I said, "What is Chernobyl's blackbird?" He said it's like America's Mothman. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, back in 1967 in Virginia, there were sightings of a giant moth-type creature. It had red eyes, generally black in build, and it was seen flying around Mount Pleasant, I believe. Let me check my notes here. What's what it says? Oh, past it. Yes, in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, is where the first sightings were seen around November of 1967. It was sighted by a variety of people. Residents, it was seen chasing cars. There's animal mutilations that occurred, and a lot of mystery surrounding it. And then in December of that same year, there was a bridge that was going over the Ohio River from Point Pleasant to Gallipolis, I believe it's called. And at the peak of rush hour traffic, the bridge collapsed into the river, killing 46 motorists. Now, the thing about this is the Mothman was seen perched, standing, however you want to call it, on the bridge prior to the collapse. So some people call the Mothman a harbinger of doom. Now, I also found out in the 80s, I believe it was, let me see if it's in my notes here, September 10th, 1978, the Mothman was once again sighted in Germany when a mine collapsed in Freiburg, where it killed several miners. Now, there were supposed to be 20 more miners working that day, but they didn't come to work because they were apparently scared away by the sight of a Mothman-like creature. So they've seen something, it scared them, and they're like, yeah, no, we're not coming to work today. We're going to stay home, drink some brewskis, eat some sausages, stay with mama, and hide under the blankets, because whatever we saw, I ain't coming to work. Forget it. It's done. Of course, these are they figments of imagination? Is it mass hysteria? Is it something their subconscious mind, the primal side, comes up as a warning to say, hey, we need to stay away from this area because something's going to occur? Now, let's go back to 1986, 87. Everybody's heard of Chernobyl. Chernobyl's the first greatest nuclear disaster in the world, next to 3 Mile Island. 3 Mile Island wasn't that bad, but Chernobyl has left a nuclear dead zone basically on our planet. Their technicians and people spotted this black bird, they called it. Now, as you see, it's similar to our Mothman. This is one rendition of it. It looks similar to one of the first pictures we've seen. Short, squat, no head. The eyes are like in the torso. Semi-clawed feet, similar to one depiction of the Mothman. Another one, it's similar, humanoid, but still the eyes are in the chest. It's black, about 6-7 feet tall, with maybe humanoid type legs. Now, remember with the Mothman, it's similar to this. Some say it's got a humanoid type head with red eyes. There's many descriptions because you remember with people, no one witness sees the same exact thing as everybody else. Well, I'm going to read to you the story from some articles I checked about Chernobyl's blackbird, Russia's Mothman. In the days leading up to the Chernobyl disaster, workers at the nuclear plant claimed to have seen a creature known as the blackbird. Now here's an interesting side note. In the area around Chernobyl, they have a bird called the crane. This crane stands between 4 to 5 feet, gray in color, 5-foot wingspan, and the eyes, and it's very possible, and I'm going to use this as a possible disclaimer, that if it was seen at night, and depending on the visibility and the conditions, and depending if you're using a flashlight or indirect lighting, it could be confused to be this giant creature. Indirect light or flashlights could cause the redness in the eyes. And like I say, the visibility, depending on time of night it is, would also make it seem to be bigger, larger, and definitely a whole lot scarier than it is. Now that's just a possible side. That's a possibility if we're going to disclaim it, if we're going to debunk it. But like I said, we can't say for sure because I wasn't there. You weren't there. If you were there, please send me pictures. I'd love to see them. All right, going back to the story. The terrifying creature rose above the horizon of Chernobyl in Pripyat, a hideous humanoid with giant wings, a black headless body, and red glowing eyes, sending a message of doom to all those who gazed upon it. Now, this is very similar to America's Mothman from Virginia, about the giant wings, black headless body, and red glowing eyes. From the majority of the witness accounts, in the days leading up to the Chernobyl disaster, several workers in the control room of the nuclear power plant in the northern Ukraine claimed to have seen the creature that is known as the blackbird of Chernobyl. Those lucky enough to see the creature were said to be plagued with terrifying dreams and threatening phone calls. Now, the phone calls, from what I understand, came from the KGB. They were saying, "Comrades, you did not see nothing. You say nothing. Nothing occurred." Okay. Still, others believed the blackbird of Chernobyl was a form of the creature known as the Mothman, whose presence only ever meant one thing: that a catastrophic event would soon follow. Now, it's been quite a few years since the Chernobyl tragedy, and it seems that further time moves away from the event, the stories, folklore, and legends continue to captivate and grow. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention. Mothman was reportedly seen in Chicago, but the only disasters that we have there is the occasional riots and the former mayor that got voted out. So if that was a catastrophe, so be it. I'll leave that to y'all. And then also, I didn't know this, there was a TV series called Chernobyl. So apparently there's an endless desire to know what goes on in Chernobyl with mysteries, mysteries, more knowledge. There's even music out there about the blackbird, and I haven't listened to it. Some of it is in Russian, and I'm not sure if it exactly goes with this or not, but if you get a chance, look it up. It's called The Black Raven, and some of it's also called Blackbird. Excuse me. An archaeologist from Sydney, Robert Maxwell, is the only archaeologist who has ever worked at Chernobyl completely, 2 field excursions, at the excursion zone in 2010 and 2012. He's passionate about the place in both the historical and archaeological sense. There's little Maxwell doesn't know about Chernobyl on matters of both the physical and supernatural world. Maxwell told News.com that the legend of the Blackbird of Chernobyl was something he heard about when he was in the exclusion zone. Legend states in the days leading to April 26, 1986, that a supernatural creature was sighted in the sky over Chernobyl by many of the men in the control room. He also claimed to have seen this terrifying creature just before the explosion, Maxwell said. Now, because one of those fables that's difficult to track because it relies on the accounts of people who died to radioactive contamination. Now, going on to that, supposedly, people who seen the blackbird prior to the disaster died from radioactive poisoning or contamination. If they seen it, they died. That is one of the things, part of the myth and the fable. So very few people are alive who actually supposedly seen it. Everything is passed down by word of mouth, So if my producer seen it, he told me, and my producer passed away, I can only tell you what he said as a third party. So all we're having is third party testimony. We have supposedly no living witnesses to the Chernobyl blackbird, unlike the American Mothman or the German visitor of the Mothman. So for people trying to check the veracity of these claims, of course, you got to take them on face value because there's not a lot of history or archaeology to go on. But the stories persist, even today. Maxwell describes the legends around Chernobyl as the fireside stories of the 21st century. These days, the Blackbird of Chernobyl is something of an internet legend, similar to Slender Man and the creepypasta legend, the Smiling Man. I'm not familiar with these. I did not take the time to look them up, so bad on me. But if you get an opportunity, look up the Slender Man, the Smiling Man. Drop me some comments, let me know what you say, but it'd be something for me to look into forward and maybe put them in a future show, here. These legends do fill a place for us as humans that the ghost stories and stories by the fireside fulfilled back in the earlier centuries. But there are a couple of versions of the Blackbird story, and the earliest account seems to have come from 2005, Maxwell said. According to the legend, rumors went through the ranks of Chernobyl that 5 employees had seen a dark, headless creature with gigantic wings and fire-red eyes. Chernobyl employees began sharing strangely similar experiences. Some had horrifying nightmares, while others received threatening phone calls. Once again, KGB comments, you did not see nothing, you will not talk nothing did not happen. If not, one may take it to the Gulag. We'll go on. The second account I've heard of this story comes from 2007, which says that the people in and around the power plant began to experience a series of strange events revolving around sightings of a mysterious creature, also described as a large, dark, and mutated creature with large wings and piercing red eyes. People affected by the phenomenon also experienced nightmares and had first-hand encounters with the winged beast. Some of the workers reported their bizarre experiences to supervisors of the facility, but there was little these officials could do, even if they'd been willing to take action. Then in April, the disaster struck. Now you got to remember, back in Russia during those times, communist rule. If you complain, the Gulag is down the road. Basically, you went with the system. Reactor number 4 of the power plant exploded on April 26, and 2 days later, the entire city of Pripyat, now I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, was evacuated. It was several years later that stories of the Blackbird began to spread. Because the workers apparently described the Blackbird as a headless, large-winged black creature with no head but with fire-red eyes, which most people take to mean the eyes appear in the torso, it sounded very similar to the Mothman sightings in the West. Many people believe the Mothman, like Blackbird of Chernobyl, are the harbingers of doom, in the same way the Banshee was a herald of doom and death to many Celtic societies. Now, is it possible this is just the harbinger of doom still? That this is the harpy? But we're seeing it in a different incarnation. We're not seeing the female's face and the half female torso with the arms and the lower body being deformed and the wings, but this is an upgraded version of the harpy. What's the word I'm looking for? A new incarnation, we should say, incarnation. because maybe it's just nature's way of saying, hey, you're doing something wrong. I'm here to correct it or warn you what you're doing. Now, it's interesting. With the Mothman sightings, in the area around Point Pleasant, there's a lot of abandoned ammo bunkers. It used to be known for building, the area was known for manufacturing explosives during World War II. So there was a lot, and chemicals. So there was a lot of industry, so you say chemical related in there. Now with Russia, with Chernobyl, you're talking radiation type things, and their standards may not be as high as they are in the US. So it's very possible a similar environment was created that brought about the blackbird or the Mothman there too. That they thrive in adverse, chemically enriched environments or hazardous environments. We'll use hazardous. We'll say hazardous environments. This is their home. And maybe they got a certain flight path, certain radius, but they go out and they know an area is going to be bad because something's going to happen, like with the bridge collapse, or Chernobyl's going to collapse, or going to implode or explode. Now, Chicago, different story. Nothing's happened there except for the riots and their former mayor. Now, with mines, there's always the by-waste chemicals used with there. So that's another possibility for a hazardous environment for a Mothman-type creature to grow, especially in that area. And then it shows up to warn people that, hey, something bad's going to happen. I'm giving you a warning. And then, lo and behold, disaster occurs. All right. Now, what are your thoughts? I mean, what's the possibility that an American Mothman could be seen in another place? But then it's like with Bigfoot. There's variations of Bigfoot over the United States and other countries. Russia's got a variation of it. China's got a variation of it. There's the Yeti, but that's a totally different creature for snow-wise because it's in a mountainous terrain. So it's a variation. So the blackbird may be another variation. Now, let's get back here. The Herald of Doom. This is what Maxwell's saying the blackbird is. According to Maxwell, while some see the Mothman as a herald of doom, others see the creature in a different light. It seems to be a time traveler of some kind that keeps returning to sudden and unexpected disasters. Now, this is an interesting thought. Maybe sometime in the far future, our distant children send back a creature capable of surviving, especially in hazardous environments, to maybe chase away some folks that are supposed to live that wouldn't have lived if they weren't chased away. So look at the paradox. If you didn't send somebody back, they would have died, and they weren't supposed to. So now we got to send somebody back to chase them away so that they can live, so that a certain event in the future can occur. Makes your brain hurt if you think about it. And for others, the Mothman is a completely supernatural entity that is drawn in like a moth drawn to a flame. The Mothman or the blackbird is simply drawn to the energy of disasters, or so the story goes. Okay, when people die, energy is released. That energy is your life, or life force, your spirit. So if you have a massive amount of spirit being released, as we just said, the Mothman is being possibly pulled to it, to the spirits of the people that are dying or leaving. It's a thought. Now, why does we do not see these during combat or wars? I don't know. Maybe people are just too busy fighting each other and trying to stay alive that they never noticed. All right, it's fascinating. A little spooky side note to the story of the Chernobyl, because not many people are aware of the stories of this creature, but it certainly adds to the creep factor. I never knew about the story until my coworker told me. And as if the Chernobyl disaster wasn't terrifying enough, And he got these alleged encounters with the black-winged, red-eyed creatures at night. As for Maxwell, the question remains, during the 2 field excursions to Chernobyl excursion zone, did he see anything supernatural? He did not. There was nothing he seen. It was just his regular excursion into the most radioactive contaminated place in the world. He just went in there, did his job, took pictures, took samples, and seen a place frozen in time that is slowly decaying. That's what Maxwell's seen. Now my question to you, my listeners, is the Mothman a harbinger of doom drawn to people dying, or the potential for death, generally like a moth? Is he a time traveler sent back to frighten off certain people because they have a role to play in the future, or their children have a role to play in the future? I don't know. But the supposed sightings in Chicago, why didn't something happen? Or did something happen we don't know about? Something under wraps? Now, these are questions that I've asked you to think about. Now, if any of you know any more things about the Mothman or Chernobyl Blackbird, or stories similar to these, please send me some information, and I'd love to put them on the show. See, I never would have known about the Chernobyl Blackbird till somebody told me about it, and I did a little research. And it's like, hey, I'm going to share this because I never knew that there was another type of Mothman out there. And it also occurred not just in America, but in Germany and in the Ukraine. And it could be occurring right now elsewhere in the world. Could it be over Gaza? Could it be over in Ukraine while there's fighting? Could it be somewhere over near Taiwan in preparations for battle? But maybe it's staying away from those areas because it's conflict. It's not the disaster of surprise, which is what the mine collapse, the bridge collapse, the reactor exploding, because those were unexpected. Where war is not unexpected. Well, the first few hours it is, but after that, it's not. This is something to think about, and I'd like you as my listeners to think about it. Give me your comments. Send me your stories. Let me know what you think. And next week, let's talk about the American Thunderbird. Okay, the thing that the American Indians have seen, some people still see, that is also the totem for the U.S. Air Force's flight team. They're called the Thunderbirds. I think that would be a very good subject to talk about. Okay, well, folks, I don't have anything else to say for you tonight, but I hope you all be safe, be sound. Look to the skies. Look to the horizon. If you see something, you hear something, someone shares something with you, share with me so I can share with the world. And just remember, be safe, be careful. Look over your shoulder occasionally. Make sure there's somebody not there. And if you start feeling like you got eyes on you and your skin starts to pimple up and you get that cold chill, run. Because you never know what might be watching. All right, folks, you have a good evening. And this is Norman from South Carolina.